So good evening, dear colleagues, and welcome. Thank you for being here with Alison. You all know Alison, and it's my first time to really be together with you. And I'm very, very honored that you bring your time and then you bring your attention to this. Um, I just talked with Alison about how we sometimes underestimate our brilliance, but it's not for us that we got that brilliance. It's for sharing. It's for making sure that others can benefit of the qualities that we have. Because Alison told me that she almost didn't apply for the Innovation and Mindfulness Awards. And how would I, for one, never have known about this wonderful program if she hadn't. So I truly believe that we are very fortunate, Alison, that you were selected to be one of the finalists. I honor you for what you have achieved already with GPs. I know from my own experience how hard it is to be a GP, and all people know it since grades anatomy. So this is a really timely contribution. And I also think that the honors you got and the dissemination you got and the requests that you just told me that the trust wants you to expand to the whole group of GP. This is just wonderful. Just wonderful. Congratulations.
Well, we haven't sorted that one finally, but I've been
Oh, well,
invited to pitch for it, and
we will
that's
see.
really
We will
exciting.
see. For
Absolutely.
those of you who have never been here before, I will say a few words about Ayamba. Then Alison will take us on a short landing meditation to be together and to stay in that tradition that we share, that we use the practice to stabilize and then to have insights. And then we will listen to your story, Alison, and find out whether we go into breakout rooms or whether this is already our breakout room. So we pronounce it Ayamba, which is maybe not a good pronunciation for the UK. Typically coming from non-English speakers. And it originally meant European Associations for Mindfulness-based Approaches. But it's not European anymore. EAMBA has extended beyond Europe. We have members in the Middle East, in Lebanon, Israel, and in Turkey. We also have members in South Africa and in the US. So EAMBA is growing beyond Europe because many colleagues see that it is good to connect and that making a community and supporting each other is a valuable thing to make sure that mindfulness can be brought to society. And you, Alison, have brought mindfulness to a part of society that from there can bring it to more people and households. Because when people are not well, they're more receptive to change their habits and to make habits that are more healthy. So Ayamba Exchange is the branch of Ayamba where we organize events. We typically have two meetings a month with the community where we invite an expert or a colleague to share their experience, a program, or a particular research, or something that is going on in politics, that there are decisions to like finance programs or make sure that programs can be integrated into schools or particular contexts that are important to be practicing. At the moment, we connect 34 mindfulness teacher associations in Europe and beyond. So Ayamba does not connect the umbrella organization Ayamba is a collective of teacher associations. And those teacher associations operate locally to support the teachers directly. In a Yamba exchange, the teachers themselves are directly welcome. When we have bigger events, like we had events with more than 500 people, then the individuals are the ones who take part, and of course also the boards of the associations. With that being said, I want to take the time that we have to go into the program. So, Alison, a very warm welcome to you. And I really, really appreciate that you want to take the time to lead us first in the meditation, maybe from your program, which would be wonderful. And you, Rita, Harry, and Jess probably already know that meditation. Um, and then you will take it away and introduce us to why you did this, what your background is to do this. And I've also seen that you have inspired researchers to find out the effectivity of your program. So maybe if you want to talk a bit about that, that is also very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What a beautiful introduction. I found that very moving, Katerina, and then very illuminating to hear more about Yamba and how it operates. What a wonderful exchange opportunity this is. So as you say, let's start as we usually do with a practice. It's just a short arriving practice that you will all be very familiar with and indeed may well be using on a daily basis. Just an invitation to put yourself onto mute if you haven't done so already. And let's just take that definite shift in our posture. That really signals our intention to fall awake in these next few moments. This will be a brief practice. Closing the eyes if that feels helpful for you. And just taking these first few moments to tune in to what's here for you. Yeah, from the busyness of your day to this moment, sitting here, just noticing what's arising. Maybe some thoughts are here. It can be helpful to silently name what's going on for you cognitively. Maybe thinking is here, or worrying is here, planning, ruminating. Allowing things to be just as they are, but just acknowledging your experience with great kindness and tenderness. And maybe those thoughts are having some impact on how you're feeling emotionally. So tuning in now to what's here for you, what mood is here. Again, maybe naming, maybe some fear or happiness, sadness, trepidation. Again, allowing that to be here. And then last but not least, tuning into the body. Noticing body sensations. That can also be useful just to name that silently to oneself. And then in step 2, this very deliberate gathering of the attention to a single point of focus. And tuning into where you notice your breath most vividly. It may be in the nostrils or in the belly. And noticing sensations here. Not changing the breath in any way. Just noticing sensations of the in-breath and the out-breath. And it can be supportive to count the breaths, breathing in and breathing out. 1. Breathing in, breathing out. 2. Up to 5. And then step 3, expanding the attention now to the whole body sitting here breathing. Noticing what's happening here in the body, scanning the body gently, noticing areas of ease and comfort, areas where things feel more neutral, and maybe areas where there feels like there's some bracing or tension. And just seeing what it's like to be breathing with those areas where there may be some holding on from the busyness of the day. Again, allowing things to be just as they are, breathing with those sensations. And seeing if it's possible to bring a tenderness, a kindness to your experience. And just as we sit here with this expanded awareness, or the beginnings of expanded awareness, just offering a poem, some words from Kaveri Patel, osteopathic doctor, who invites us to practice this radical act of not believing every thought that arises for us, to take a revolutionary pause and to ask ourselves the simplest of questions of what would be the kindest thing I could do at this moment. So his words to us are, dear you, you who always have so many things to do, so many places to be, your mind spinning like fan blades at high speed, each moment always a blur, because you're never still. I know you're tired. I also know it's not your fault. The constant brain buzz is like a swarm of bees threatening to sting if you close your eyes. You've forgotten something again, you need to prepare for that or else. You should have done that differently. What if you closed your eyes? Would the world fall apart without you? Or would your mind become the open sky, flock of thoughts flying across the sunrise? As you watched and smiled. So the invitation now is to come back into the room, opening up your eyes, and maybe bringing that expanded attention to our time together this evening. So I'm going to share with you the slideshow that I've presented. And I'm just checking that you can see this. So maybe Katerina, can you see the show?
Not yet, but you have all rights to share. So
okay, let me go back. Okay, so let me press a few more buttons.
what I will do is I remove the spotlight. Maybe that's the reason. Okay. Let's see what happens. Yes.
I think we're on. Lovely. So, thumbs up if you can see it. Marvelous. All right. So I'm aware that this is an exchange. So I kind of want to, in some way, offer an apology for hopefully not too much of me talking, but important though to lay out the stall so that colleagues who watch this are able to get a sense of the work that we've been doing in Gloucestershire. But hopefully then we can come onto a fruitful discussion with 3 of the GPs who are in the room who've actually been the participants on this course and collaborators. So I really want to focus on their rich sharing as well. Some of this is a bit of new information for them as well around the results. So let me take you through the presentation. The first, maybe I should introduce myself actually before this slide, is that I'm a consultant clinical psychologist and a CBT therapist, and then trained as a mindfulness teacher. And then the pandemic hit, and I was really very, very struck by how desperate things were in the health service through colleagues and friends and family, actually, and very much wanted to gift something back into primary care in those very challenging times. And then I was thinking, where do I go? Where do I start here? And it struck me really from my previous role as a lead in psychological therapy services within primary care, that primary care is in this extraordinarily pivotal position in terms of the provision of population health. And I felt that actually, if I worked in that sector, I could have even more impact. I could really help the GPs who were struggling enormously with stress, but I would also have this potential for the GPs then to be enabled to help others. And what I also knew is that there is a very, I don't think it is an overestimate to say that there's this sort of multi-layered staffing and retention and recruitment crisis within primary care across our country, not just in Gloucestershire. We have a shortage of GPs, and we have this ever-increasing demand on their services. We've got budget restraints, maybe some improvement. There was some good news today from our government. There's service backlogs, so in terms of referring on, there's a lot of backlogs there. Rising patient expectation, and what we were certainly witnessing, and I've witnessed now, is a huge amount of GP and physician stress and burnout. And I've been exploring in my mind, what is this about? And of course, it's all of the above. But also, we've got this really interesting idea. It's a sort of Jungian idea around the kind of the caregiver or the mother archetype. This idea of the GP, I think, amongst the population, of this rather sort of central, noble, selfless, inexhaustible figure who's always there and will always provide. colliding with, the very obvious material limits that of time and budgets, and the fact that GPs are only human. And I was exploring that as an idea, and I think it's a really interesting one, actually. I'd like to explore it further around the archetype that by its very different definition, we're carrying around this sort of this general population is carrying this notion around, and maybe even the GPs, it's there too. And maybe it's time to revisit that. And this collision of the archetype and what's possible obviously generates this tension between those two things, and threatens then to unravel the individuals and also the institution of our NHS, but maybe particularly primary care. So my question was, could mindfulness offer some solace here and improve staff well-being and potentially even improve patient care? So today, what I want to do is to outline the challenge and indeed the opportunity of working in primary care, describe some of the adaptations we made, and then go through the results of the work that we've been doing. We're going to then move on to GP feedback and also next steps. So the question was, could mindfulness improve staff well-being and compassion, and maybe even offer a new paradigm for primary care? So as I mentioned, I started this conversation with GPs and colleagues back in 2020 in those early challenging days of the pandemic. And now we're 610 and a few more actually, GPs and primary care staff later. And what we've been doing is offering a range of activities, mindfulness activities for these groups. The 8-week mindfulness course, which was an adaptation of the Peace in a Frantic World course from Penman and Williams. Taster sessions, protected learning times. I was being wheeled out for those to begin to socialize colleagues to this approach. The offering of silent retreat days, which I made as an essential part of the course, not optional. A community of practice of meeting monthly thereafter, and that is ongoing, I'm pleased to say. The development of champions, 3 of whom are sitting in this room. They may not want to call themselves champions, but nevertheless they are. And also this is a new development of mindfulness and compassion. It's a workbook to share with other colleagues. And so we've done 15 cohorts in total, which has really helped us to understand some of the particular pain points for GP colleagues and their colleagues. And that has helped us to develop a curriculum, a particular mindfulness curriculum for primary care. And in the last 18 months, we have been collaborating with the rather brilliant Wellbeing Line for Gloucestershire, and also the University of Bath, Professor Paul Chadwick and his team. And we've been enabled to do this with some funding from NHS England. And we're now exploring both some potential for local additional funding and also some national funding. I think and Katerina mentioned it at the beginning, a collaboration potentially with the University of Manchester, Maria Panagiotti and Kelly Birtwell, to look at embedding cultural change across primary care, across a number of sites in England. So an articulation of the pain points. On the left-hand side, this list that were described by GPs when they were applying for a place on the course, but very particularly of the sense of no time. We don't have time. burnout, exhaustion, a huge fear of making errors because of the pressure on them, a sense of overwhelm, particularly low sense of accomplishment and satisfaction. They're doing an extraordinary job, and yet what we were not seeing then is a sense of huge kind of pride in what they were doing. A very inevitably reactive and problem-focused approach to suffering. Loneliness, I mean, particularly in the early stages of the pandemic, but it may also still be around, that lack of a sense of connection and community, and also a huge sense of responsibility for their colleagues and their patients, but also a sense of guilt, of fearing that they were letting others down. And then the aim, and indeed what we're getting from our feedback, is now, following intervention, this sense of actually there's time. And the use of the pause in their life. Greater work-life balance is what came out of the thematic analysis that we did. An attitude of greater acceptance of it is as it is. So not so much wrestling with it. Personal boundaries. Some of the GPs talked about getting much more fierce about self-protection. Really interesting theme about permission to self-care, that the course offered that. More of a sense of agency and control, and a greater sense of their own value, valuing themselves. So we work very particularly on building self-compassion. And practicing that throughout the day, throughout the working day, enabling and the GPs and colleagues feeling much more willing to invest in networking with their family groups, with their friendship groups, and indeed with their colleagues. Improved listening, that came out very consistently. I felt a feeling that the consultation was being transformed through the mindfulness program. Moving towards a different approach to pain and suffering. And this is something that we would really like to explore further in additional research. This very liberating idea that thoughts are not facts. This was a theme that came up for GPs in their feedback. And a greater appreciation of their role and indeed of their colleagues. So the model and the adaptations, it was based very much on Peace in a Frantic World, and we recommended that people bought that book and used it as their kind of manual, if you like, through the program. But the workbook, they're intending for that to be a supplement to that work. But there's three areas that I felt were really important to highlight. First of all, that the program seemed to have very high face validity and acceptability. So we consistently had very large numbers of people applying, which was wonderful. And then, reflecting on what was that about, I think partly what we did is we did quite a lot of work around the timing of when we were offering it. So these were largely evening groups, not daytime. And we tried to fit in with the end of the clinical day. Although certainly in the early days, we had a lot of GPs who were still in the office and doing body scans on the examination couch. The languaging that we used, this may not translate out of England, but the words I'm going to use is that we tried to make the language not at all kind of woo-woo or spiritual. I kind of focused much more of the language on neuroscience and the brain, and avoided some of the language that I thought may be initially off-putting. There was a lot of word of mouth. So as soon as we had the first one or two cohorts through, there was a lot of passing it on to colleagues. So we benefited hugely from that. And the development of champions. We very quickly established a group of people in the monthly community of practice who were committed, much more committed practitioners, who we kind of rather shamelessly used to keep passing on information and indeed gathering information around, what would make this program even more acceptable. Working in association with an existing service within the NHS, rather than being a total sole provider coming in. I'm independent of the NHS, but managed to get a good relationship with the wellbeing line, and they've really supported this programme. And then the funding from NHS England was a huge kind of rubber stamp, was very beneficial. And we've always emphasised a sense of collaboration. I came into this with great humility, actually, of being endlessly grateful that people turned up and rather surprised, and then really kind of emboldened by people's feedback. And so have developed the programme iteratively with colleagues and have really used testimonials to further market the work from people who've been through the programme. And we've developed a whole series of short films, which we've also used in the promotion. And we've tried to make it as relevant as is possible to primary care through this iterative development. So we very much focused on the single staff group, initially of GPs, and then expanded out to all primary care staff. But have made all the kind of curriculum examples that, as teachers will be aware of, made that all very relevant to primary care, and put an emphasis on weaving it into the job. So when we're looking at facilitators and barriers around home practice, it's really around how have others woven it into the job. We were also very, very mindful of sustainability. The NHS sees things, brilliant things, innovative things come and then they go. And we very much wanted this to land and to stay around for people, to shift people's lives and to really facilitate ongoing practice. So the development of champions and advocates, we've really emphasised that as a core part of the programme. Development of the workbook, which we hope to have out in the autumn, as a way of disseminating this to people who may never come along to a mindfulness course. And then this ongoing community of practice, which is donation-based, but it's offered there as every month we meet on the first Thursday. And we aim to carry on providing that. So the results, and this is probably the bit of information that is new to you, Rita and Harry and Jazz. So we've got a lot of data from the last 5 years, but through the University of Bath, we've managed to have this evaluated independently. So uncontrolled before and after study design. And it's the pre and post data was on 47 primary care staff. And what we found is a very significant difference in relationship with work. Here we're calling it work satisfaction. Again, significant difference in well-being pre and post the course, and very significant difference in self-compassion. Using those standardized questionnaires. 92% found the course helpful. They found it supportive, life-changing, for some, life-saving, which was extraordinary feedback to receive. The retreat day was really focused on as something that was very, very powerful for people. It kind of brought practices together, embedding the practices into their working day, setting boundaries, permission to self-care, and greater compassion. 94.6 would recommend to a colleague, which is great. One of our colleagues said it should be mandatory for all GPs, but also highlighting that it takes commitment. 81% it made a difference to well-being, greater kindness to myself. Somebody said that I now eat and sleep better, so now I have more energy for my life and my job. this sort of further investment in friends and hobbies because of the mindfulness course. Very interestingly, 78% said it made a difference to their clinical practice, so that they take breaks now, and our colleagues can speak more to this, more present when consulting, listening better, and noticing the good bits of the job. And also that it's making a difference to interactions with patients. This is a little bit of the quotes that we've had from testimonials. And again, we use this in the marketing of the next course. And I've got a little film to show, which if we have time, I can do that, or we can go straight into our colleagues. What do you think is best, Katerina?
No, you prepared this. You have a reason, so please. I already said don't be shy because you got this experience, so we are going to listen.
Oh, what if I could find it? Let's have a look.
Can you just click on the link, maybe? Would
That's
that help?
Yeah, it's not going. Let's have a look. Let's come into. I'm going to fiddle with that and find it, but I think let's move to a discussion. I think if I come out of stop sharing, that's what I'm going to do. Let's come back and then I can have a fiddle. And if it feels helpful, what I'm aware of is that two of the people who were in the film are actually sitting here too. And it would be, I think, probably more valuable to have a discussion with all of us in the room as to your reflections on mindfulness and its role in your lives, whether those results resonate with you and indeed resonate with you now, because it's been some time since you've actually been on the course. So maybe a really kind of honest, open discussion, if you feel that would be helpful. Would that work, Katerina? Yeah.
Yes, please.
All right. So maybe we could all come off mute. We can pop ourselves back on if we've got children or dogs or whatever in the background. So, what's your reflections on that presentation?
Shall I go then? I think it all seems very true, whatever you have written, and I think for me, Alison, your mindfulness course came at a time when it was much needed. I didn't actually realize I needed it, so I did the questionnaire that you sent, and my scores were really not good. And I did not even know that I was getting towards a burnout. So that was interesting to actually find out that my job was not as enjoyable as I thought it was. And then I did the course, and I have been practicing yoga and slash mindfulness in the past, but it wasn't anything as I would say it opened my eyes to lots of things that we could do even when you're not actually sitting meditating. You can, observe your thoughts, observe what's going around. I found that really helpful. I found that I was paying attention to things that I normally wouldn't, like interaction with children or with my family or at work, and feeling in myself, how is that making me feel when something is said or something I say. So that was really interesting. I found a friend who I meditated with quite regularly, and actually it was quite interesting seeing local GPs there, because I don't normally go to any educational sessions after work, and it was interesting to meet them virtually, and there is already a bond because you know each other through work, but I've never been have never interacted in that way, which was I think it was good. It was good to, and I still see them sometimes in a meeting, and there is a connection. So that was a side effect of this, which was a pleasant thing. We had you over for one of our trainees post-COVID sessions that we had organized for the GP trainees, which was, I think it was very successful. So if I hadn't done that course, then I don't think I would have suggested that, or we would have done that. I think most of our TPDs, Harry's there, we had done the course and we went, yes, we should invite you. So that was really, really good. Yeah, so I hope to continue to do your monthly sessions, and I'm really grateful that you were able to offer that.
Oh, thank you, Jazz, and thank you for your support actually for this program. And really interesting to hear that the questionnaire enabled you to start to notice, because you hadn't noticed before, that maybe there was a little bit more struggle than you realized. So that's interesting as a starting point. And then the course, mindfulness, enabled you to get more appreciation from your life. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then passing it on, and what an opportunity that was to come along and speak to very newly trained or GPs in training. That was wonderful, before
Yeah.
they've even started the journey. Yeah. Jazz, can I ask you a question around your practice and
Yeah.
whether or not mindfulness has had an impact on you as a GP?
So I try and do it maybe, well, not, I wouldn't say every day, but maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And even if I'm not able to practice, then that 3-minute meditation is mindfulness practice is very useful. As a GP, I think I'm definitely more relaxed, and it has made me more relaxed, and it has made me, sometimes when we are seeing patients, we get really involved in it. It has given me that, maybe the practice has given me the tools to actually see things from a distance. So be a little bit more outside, to view it from outside in,
Yeah.
which was a skill, I'll be honest, I don't think I had developed that skill before I started practicing. So, because your prefrontal cortex is the one which lets you do that, and I don't think I was using it to my advantage. But it certainly helped. To sometimes when situation at work, or even in social life, you feel that things are getting derailed, you can actually take a view and think, and then see what's actually going on, and maybe not react, or take a pause, which I don't think I would have done. I had never done before.
That's so interesting, and I can see how that would massively benefit the consultation in terms of outcome, because you've got that more spaciousness around it. And what about for you personally? If the impact of, I would imagine it's very challenging seeing patient after patient after patient and getting really involved. Your words. I
I
wonder.
think
Hmm,
I think it's made my job a lot more satisfying. Um, I actually I can now have a better connection with my patients. I've noticed it over, I think it's been in the last maybe 3 or 4 years. I've noticed I connect to my patients better, and I can see it, and I can feel it, that they are telling me things they wouldn't have told me before. And there are times when sometimes I feel I'm getting tired, this is too much. I would actually share it with them and say, I'm feeling this. I'm sure you have felt like that as well. So,
hmm,
because they are already seeing, if I'm losing attention, I think just talking about it, and I feel I'm more human. I feel I'm not trying to be know-it-all person, and I share it with them, and I think they appreciate that. And my feedback from my patients, I would say in the last few years, it's been amazing. I mean, the complaints I used to get sometimes, or the doctor's not listening, and you think, oh, I did everything I could to touch wood. I haven't had any of those complaints, and I feel I'm more present, and better job satisfaction obviously means that you come home happier and you're not stressed. And
Yeah.
if I'm wrong, I do admit that. I say to them, I think I got this wrong. Let's do this. Let's do that instead.
Wow. I love that. I really love that impact. I've not heard it spoken about like that. That sense of it's okay to just be human, because what else can you be? And being really open and honest about that, and how your patients are responding. Thank you, Jazz. So I can see lots of nodding, and I'm really keen to hear from others, but thank you so much for sharing so openly and beautifully, Jazz. It's really valuable. And we'll come back if there's any further comment you want to make. But Harry or Rita, would you like to jump in? Or indeed, Katerina, do you have any comments at this point?
I would like to offer something that I heard from Rosamund Oliver, who offers training in deep listening. And what you just said, Jazz, is well, she did a training together with a GP. The GP said that she had always been very stressed and um, very rushed to ask patients to get all the information she needed. And then in the end, very often she missed information. So, due to having a training on mindfulness and deep listening, she changed her approach. And instead of starting with the questionnaire that she had in front of her, the computer, she would start by making a connection with the patient, looking at the patient, making eye contact, and very slowly asking, "What's up?" And while in the past she had experienced that some patients would very reluctantly go through her questionnaire and respond to what she wanted to know, when she simply calmly asked, "What's up?" the people started talking. And by deep listening, she could hear more things than she was able when she had that questionnaire and that structured thing that she had to fill out. And I was reminded by what you said of that totally different perspective, patient central. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Katerina. Rita or Harry, would you like to come in?
Well, Harry and I were in the same group, actually. So I think there may be some overlap in what we took away from it. But on a general level, talking about life in general as opposed to work, from the weekly sessions, from the silent retreat, from reading the book, from doing the meditations, I felt that life just slowed down for me, that I, as part of all of what we learned, started to notice nature, the world. We had sessions where we had to do an act of kindness, for example, in a week, and Alison did an example of letting people through in traffic, or
I did that yesterday,
and I did it today.
Well done.
And it just sounds so simple, it's smiling at people, making conversation, saying hello to strangers, things that we seem to have lost, actually, and we discovered it and we did it and it works, and enhanced our lives, really, as well as the meditation and the weekly meetings. Befriending, just opening yourself up to friendship with your work colleagues, or even strangers, or to your family. Befriending yourself, offering compassion to yourself, makes you more compassionate as a person to others, which I had heard before but not experienced before, but it works. So if you are compassionate to yourself, you become a more kinder, listening, patient type of person, I found for myself. And then on a practical level, there are lots of good ideas in our group, and the things that I've taken away is that so my room is sort of a 30-second walk from the waiting room, so we've got windows everywhere, so I make myself slow down. I used to rush to the waiting room, rush back with the patient and get this consultation going, but I just slow down. I walk slowly to the waiting room. I feel my feet on the ground. I look through the windows. I just look around, see what's going on, open the door, and I make a point of smiling at every patient, which it sounds obvious as a therapist you should do, but I didn't before. So I often was thinking about the consultation that I'd just done, actually. So that kind of thing. But then the other thing that has really changed for me was we did a practice called the 50-50, where you're having a conversation with somebody, but you keep part of yourself, you listen, but you keep part of yourself back, in order to enhance your listening and enhance your interaction. And the way I did it, and I think I mentioned it at the time, is that I kind of press my feet to the ground a little bit, and I do it quite a lot now, and not just at work but in other situations. So I just feel my feet, and it just sort of grounds me. And especially when things are getting a little bit tricky in a consultation, or a bit emotional, it just helps me a little bit. And then it's just there's so much I could say, really, but I won't, because we have limited time. But I'm just so much more of a positive person generally, and it spills over in work, to my work colleagues, to my patients. I don't think I've ever enjoyed my work as much, I think.
Wow. Wonderful, Rita. And I really remember your pushing the feet down.
My feet.
I think of your feet often, Rita. Yeah, thank you. And it's so interesting, isn't it, how I we've got finite amount of time here, but really illustrating what lands for people is different, actually, where they put the emphasis. And for you, what I was really hearing is the compassion, the befriending, and also the anchoring, tuning into the body, whilst consulting.
Yeah. Well, you asked us to write ourselves a letter at the end of the course, and then a few weeks later, or quite a few months later, actually 6 months later, you wrote back to us. And I just want to read the first paragraph of my letter, which kind of summarizes it. It says, "Your body is your compass. Let the sensations allow you to recognize situations, both pleasant and unpleasant, so you can experience them without judgment and respond accordingly. Let your body be your anchor and your refuge." And I think that kind of does sum it up for me, that I am trying to listen to myself and use it as my compass and my refuge and my anchor, really.
It's a beautiful use of language. It says so much. It's so profound and so helpful. Yeah.
Well, that wasn't me before I did mindfulness. I wouldn't have talked about that sort of stuff. So
Thank you, Rita. And what about for you, Harry?
Oh, again, like there's so much to say. I think, as I said, the course was hard work. Getting there. We started at 7 o'clock, which is quite challenging sometimes. So you did have to put energy into it, which is important, and it was, and I just thought it was fantastic. My interest in mindfulness first came when a medical student had done mindful driving to work as part of their special study module, and I thought, what the hell's that, And I'd heard about it, like I said, from colleagues and friends and people in my surgery who'd benefited from the course. So I jumped when I saw it, being advertised. And the things I really take away, I really like the idea you can do anything mindfully. And so I'm kind of thinking about what are the worst bits of my job day to day and how can I do them and how can then mindfulness get into that to help me, and I don't, there's some, I don't do it every day, but when things are difficult, like difficult consultations, I then, once I'm aware it's difficult, then I try and come into that 50-50, like Rita was just saying. I find meetings very difficult. And so I actually kind of try and get into the zone while I'm waiting for a meeting to start, and just to help me kind of regulate. And I find that really, really helpful. And just doing things, my mindful cup of tea in the morning, which is every week we tried a different habit change, and that's still I still do that most days, which is lovely. And thinking about, like, I was thinking about doing blood results mindfully as a job. It's a and repetitive job. You do lots of them, but actually there's thought about it. And I was looking about how I move the mouse, and you know how you move the mouse to prove you're a human when you're logging onto websites. So I've started kind of looking at how I'm moving the mouse and trying to then, and that just kind of connects me slightly to then just get out of that really busy head. And then just this morning, I was just putting my shoes on and I was just going through everything I had to do today. And then I thought, wait a second. And then I just stopped. I thought, okay, I'm just going to do my shoelaces really carefully. And that just took my head out of overthinking, undermining my day already. And I think, for me, and so finding those little ways of it taps in, then you get the quality out of everything you do. And also talking to patients. I mention a lot more to patients. And when people come mindful, I think you were saying about, every time we talk about it, more ideas come up. And you were saying, Alison, how you changed your language to more neuroscience because you were talking to, I don't know, GPs. I think when you're talking to patients, some, a big burly, 50-year-old builder, if you say mindfulness, he might think, oh, a bit hairy-fairy. And I think, rephrasing it, but you can say, well, look, I've said to many people, I've just done a mindfulness course for myself and it was fantastic. And if you've got that lived experience, then people will kind of, oh, okay, well, and you can, so you're kind of trying to, I think it amplifies, which is something that you've shown in the feedback. And last thing, on the day, on the retreat day, we had our lunch mindfully. So I had my salad, and I normally wolf down my salad in seconds. And I tried every bit individually and then in different combinations. And it took me about 40 minutes to eat it. And so, which is really good for you. You're eating slower, and so I try now to eat, I'm not always, because I'm naturally greedy, but eat my food mindfully, and actually you get much more enjoyment out of food. And it comes back to the raisin, which we did at the very start. You often do at the introduction session, and about how you can get so much of eating a single raisin, which always thinks like you're losing all those amazing experiences when you just wolf something down.
Fantastic. It's so wonderful to hear about the ways in which mindfulness can be woven in to your practice. Really, really rich sharing there, and great ideas as well to pass on. And Rita, and you were saying about, your group generated lots of very beneficial ideas. all of which are in the workbook, by the way. I put them all in. So
Oh, great.
we're going to share them further.
Lovely.
It's really, really encouraging to hear all of that. In order to have a really rounded discussion, it might also be useful to get a sense of some of the barriers and facilitators. You know, what do you think could get in the way, or is getting in the way, of you continuing your practice or building your practice, or other people building their practice? What are the barriers in primary care?
I think time is important. Sorry, Rita, you were saying something.
No, can you please carry on?
Yeah, so I think time is a barrier, especially at the beginning, to get people signed up to it. I think once they see the benefit, they will naturally come to the sessions. But in the first couple of sessions, 7 p.m. worked really well because I generally get home by then. But there are GPs who don't finish work until 7, and we had few people who were doing it from their examining rooms and stuff. So time in my mind would be a barrier we construct ourselves. Even now, when I have coffee in the morning, I know I can just take it easy and enjoy this coffee, but sometimes you just rush through it.
Yeah, I think, Harry, you touched on this, but like anything in life, the more you put in, the more you get out. And I think on a personal level, I really felt the benefits because I put a lot into it. I don't know how it would work if you hadn't done that spade work, as it were. So if you just said, oh, do some mindfulness, or let's I'll let you know, let's just do some mindfulness for 15 minutes at lunchtime. Yes, I'm sure it would make everybody feel a lot better, undoubtedly. But to get the real deep benefits, a lot of it came as a slow building, step by step, over 8 weeks, actually culminating in the silent retreat. And I think that, I mean, one of the comments was life changing. I think by doing that, you do change your life. Superficially, it can be done. I used to do mindfulness superficially after every yoga session, but I never felt the same as when I did it through the course. So I don't know whether I don't know whether you can do it without investing and putting
the homework you
homework,
get.
and actually the actions. I mean, one week we had, we all planted something or did something like that, or did an act of kindness, as I said, or we did one action very mindfully, and those things, they just embed in you, and you remember and you take it forward. So I think you get the best benefit by doing that slow.
Yeah, I would agree with the issue, because we did it over 8 weeks. We had the homework to do. We were, that kind of habit changing thing. You've got more chance of starting into a newer habit because you've invested time over 8 weeks. And I missed one of the weeks because of, I can remember something, and it took me a week or so, I think, to get back into the groove. So that regularity, I think, was quite powerful. There was definitely benefit in that. So delivering it in other formats, in shorter formats and things like, which, like you're asking about one of the barriers, I think that might be, people get interested, but then how, when you're doing it yourself, it's always harder than when you're doing it in a group,
Indeed.
And it was,
and what about the facilitators? What can we what could primary care do? Or what could you do in primary care, and how might we assist that somehow shifts the culture or your home life? What would facilitate ongoing practice for you, or indeed for others?
I think it comes from leadership in organisations.
Mm-hmm.
And my personal view is, and I think you need to try and embed it in the organisational culture, which often is different to what people think their organisational culture is. And so somehow you can potentially embed it in some way, so it's a routine, and then all staff can engage in it. You can use it. I don't know, but I think that's one that comes to that always. I think.
Do you think at a practice level, Harry, or are you thinking?
I mean, I think
higher?
before every practice meeting, you could start and do a very, 1 minute or 30-second personal check-in, and everyone does it, and they might moan about it, but then everyone does it, and then actually, then you're all there as a group together. It brings you together, even though you're in your personal space.
Yeah.
And then you do it when you have the whole team together, not just one group and one meeting, and it becomes a habit. And it's not very long, I mean, I think how to weave it in could work.
It's a wonderful idea. Yeah. Any other ideas around facilitation? What could make a difference? What could remove some of those barriers for you or for other colleagues?
We talked about in our group having plants in the rooms, and that creates a little bit of mindful focus. So I'm very bad with plants.
We can see one on your shoulder.
Yeah, that is a never dying one.
Or encouraging people to add some personal. We often hot desk and share rooms, so traditionally people have their own pictures up, but having something personal in your room, like which you can use as your anchor, and encouraging that, and you can put that as part of your staff appraisal. What's your anchor in your room? Do you know what I mean? And that's a very easy question, and it just gets people thinking in a slightly different way,
I find the poems really powerful. I mean, I can't attend the Thursday meditation monthly for work, because of work, but I love getting the poems. I mean, even if we just disseminated these just short passages, they're so just erudite and beautiful, and just hit the note perfectly and immediately make you feel better. We get these weekly bulletins from our ICB, and quite boring sometimes, but how lovely to start a bulletin with a poem, or just change that culture of. And actually, those bulletins, it's just more work. This is point after we're removing this service. Oh, great, that means more work. Or, but you've got to do this now. Oh, great, more work. Now, before you refer, you've got to do that test. Oh, more great work. Just take the edge off it. Just start it with some kindness.
I think that's
a
good wonderful idea. It is a wonderful idea, isn't it?
We should email them.
Yeah,
I'd be very happy to supply.
Rumi's poem that you began with the course. I actually went and bought his books to read the poems, but actually none of them were as effective as that one. But they're really good poems.
Yeah.
Well, thankfully, there's many more. And as you say, for some people, poetry speaks to them. Sometimes nature is what reminds us, sometimes it's the morning tea, poetry of presence. I don't know that one. Thank you.
Yes, poetry. I think poetry is more sometimes, well, it depends on person, but it is quite powerful, and it just summarizes the feeling in few words, and it's amazing.
Thank you so much, everybody, for that extraordinarily rich sharing. It really, I feel like I've gone this whole recording silent, but I just,
Thank you, Alison. I
it
think it would
just
not
is,
have, you
oh,
opened our eyes to this.
Yeah,
This book existed like for how many years or
yeah.
more, and you brought it to life. You gave us this, and it was so selfless, you and Lizzie. I mean, the retreat was so good. And you have changed a lot of lives.
oh, wow.
Yeah, because the way the course was there, but it was the way it was led and it was the way it was conducted. And I think for the first time, for us as GPs, we had somebody who, just you were just so kind. Actually, the kindness was just incredible, and that made us want to engage and participate. And it did change us, I think.
I think you said you did iterations, so you've adapted it to. So when I came to later on, after being running for a bit, it fitted in quite well for me, and you'd obviously learned and changed. And just reading that list of pressures day to day, I have to confess, I actually screenshotted it just now because I find it it's nice to see someone naming what you're feeling, what other things come through day to day.
Yeah.
And, it kind of, it's helpful to know, or not to see.
Absolutely. Well, this will be available as a PDF, so you don't need to screenshot. We'll make it available to you, and I'll make sure I send it to you. And indeed, the recording will be available. But I just wanted to say, this is co-created. I'm benefiting from those who wrote Peace in a Frantic World and all the teachers that have come before, and my training at Oxford. But actually, the co-creation comes in the room. So each course is really quite unique, actually. And so it's really honouring your work as well in the course that enables us to carry on teaching and wanting to carry on teaching. So thank you all, and particularly thank you for coming this evening and sharing all those rich feedback. We've received some of it before, but it was even more layers to it because we had that time to exchange ideas. So I've really benefited from this evening. And I'm going to struggle with self-criticism this week because of what you've said. So thank you for that.
Well deserved.
Really wonderful. Thank you. So we've just got a few more moments. Katerina, did you want to come in with some final words?
Well, I'm really impressed by how this developed so organically and so nicely, how you, Rita, Harry, and Jazz illustrated what you put on the slides before, Alison. I was very impressed when you had those two columns of what was said before as pains and what was experienced later. And you really see a shift also in self-image, in looking at one's own life, like as if a worldview has changed. Suddenly, Rita is walking more than 30 seconds to get to her patients and offering a smile, which is the shortest connection between humans. But as a doctor, they probably thought you don't smile at a patient. And so you said, I never did that before. Isn't that a revelation? I mean, it's so wonderful. And this co-creation that you're talking about, Alison, what I hear is it's not only in the training that was offered and that you adapted it to the situation, because I heard you, Jazz, and Rita say, oh, I've done some mindfulness before, maybe after yoga, but never like that. So that is really your contribution as a teacher to live and to walk your talk and make it, and I heard the word kindness, make it accessible through your own kindness and walking the talk, that it becomes so easy and that suddenly mindfulness becomes something you don't do, but mindfulness practice becomes something that you are. and the being became central. And well, if you struggle with self-criticism this week, Alison, I want to put another whipped cream on top, because that is you earned that by being the teacher you are. But also the co-creation goes further, because what I heard you say, Jazz, Harry, and Rita, is how you operate with your colleagues and with your patients, and that's paying it forward. I mean, when you talked about this, the builder, Harry, I mean, that person started doubting whether mindfulness maybe would be something for him due to you, another man, telling him, I did it. So this common humanity, that is paying forward what you experienced. And that's just wonderful. That is coming from the roots and permeating through your hospitals and cabinets as GP into society, because people take it into their families. And you did so too. So I'm enthused about what we did with the five of us. I mean, you were here, only 4 people, but the quality does not depend on the quantity. The quality depends on how we connect and how we create community and how we co-create from there. That's where everything depends on. And that's why rightfully the NHS will finance this.
We hope, fingers crossed.
Oh,
And
fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Before we end, I also must thank my associates. So I'm not the teacher on my own here. I work always with another teacher, either Lizzie Cambray or Suzanne Thomas or Mira Schneiders before she went off to have her little baby. And I've massively benefited from collaboration with the Wellbeing Line in Gloucestershire, which has really supported this work and enabled it and really contained it and supported me to offer what I offer. So a thanks to them and the University of Bath as well for evaluating it so skillfully. And that evaluation then enables us to have a little bit of a rubber stamp so that we can go and speak with others about its worth, but of much more value to me is this kind of feedback that really talks at that ground root level around the difference it can make to your lives, and as Katerina says, and then has these ripples out into the community. It's wonderful to hear. Yeah. Thank you so much, and thank you for the space, Katerina.
And it's always carried by gratitude, isn't it? Always carried by gratitude. Yeah. And that is also what I would like to share with you, my personal gratitude, and also on behalf of Iamba, that you did this, that you were so open and so giving. Thank you. I bow to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all, and good night.
Thank you.
Stop the recording, and maybe you can wait for 1 minute, please.